I stepped into the grand lobby of the Evergreen Hotel that afternoon, carrying my briefcase filled with audit notes and my phone tucked in my pocket, ready for what I thought would be just another routine job. I'm Henry Johnson, 42 years old, a black man who spent the last 15 years as a secret auditor for hotel chains, traveling endlessly and missing too many family moments back in Chicago because this work demands I stay invisible until the final report. Mr. Harlan, the owner, had personally hired me after hearing about my track record in spotting fraud and inefficiencies, and I'd dressed casually in slacks and a button-up shirt to blend in like always. No suit to tip anyone off, but the second my foot crossed that threshold, everything went wrong. The air felt thick with the scent of fresh flowers and polished marble, but I barely noticed because two security guards locked eyes on me instantly, their faces hardening like I'd just committed a crime by existing. Welcome to Melina's Stories. I share new life stories here every day, and I'd really appreciate it if you hit subscribe and liked my video. Drop a comment down below telling me where you're watching from and what time it is for you, right now. I read every single comment, and it helps me to know I'm not alone in this. The bigger one, Frank, with his shaved head and bulky frame, blocked my path before I could even approach the front desk. "Hold it right there," he barked, his voice echoing loud enough to make a couple of guests turn and stare. I froze, surprised, and said calmly, "I'm here on business. I have an appointment." But Frank just sneered, looking me up and down with that disgusted glare, his eyes lingering on my casual clothes and my skin like they were proof of something wrong. "Business? You don't look like you belong here. We don't allow people wandering in off the street." His words stung, carrying that familiar undercurrent of racial prejudice I've dealt with my whole life. From being tailed in stores as a teenager to extra scrutiny at job interviews, even with my accounting degree in hand, I reached for my wallet to show ID, keeping my tone even. "Here's my driver's license. I'm not wandering. I'm supposed to be here. You can check with whoever's in charge." Frank barely glanced at the ID before shoving it back at me, his hand brushing mine roughly. "That doesn't mean squat. We've got rules, and you're breaking them just by standing there." The younger guard, Ruiz, stepped up beside him, nodding like this was all routine. I felt my heart rate spike, the injustice of it hitting me hard. These guys hadn't even asked what my business was. They just assumed based on how I looked. "Listen, I'm an auditor sent by the owner," I explained, trying to stay composed despite the anger building inside. "Call someone if you need to verify." But Ruiz grabbed my arm then, his fingers digging in tight, and said, "No need. You're out of here." The lobby seemed to spin as guests whispered among themselves, some pulling out phones to film the scene, their stares burning into me like spotlights. Humiliation washed over me in waves. This was supposed to be a professional setting, but here I was, being treated like a criminal in front of strangers. I twisted slightly, not fighting back, but resisting enough to slow them down. "Let go of me. This is a mistake. You're making a big one." Frank laughed, a cold, mocking sound that echoed off the walls, and grabbed my other arm, yanking me toward the exit. "Mistake? We know your type, always trying to sneak in where you don't belong." Those words, "your type," cut deep, fueling the emotional trauma I've carried from years of similar encounters, where my race turns me into a suspect no matter my credentials. A few papers slipped from my briefcase as it jostled, fluttering to the lobby floor like stray leaves, but I couldn't bend down to grab them with both guards restraining me. "Please, just let me explain," I said louder, my voice steady but laced with frustration. "I'm here to work for Mr. Harlan himself." Ruiz tightened his grip, ignoring me completely, and muttered, "Save it for the cops if you don't move." Guests kept watching, some shaking their heads in betrayal, not one stepping in to help, just standing there like this was entertainment. The injustice boiled inside me. I'd earned my place through hard work, 2 jobs through college, building a career against the odds, only to face this raw prejudice again. They dragged me a few steps closer to the revolving doors, my feet sliding on the slick tile as I planted them to resist. "You can't do this, it's wrong," I protested, feeling the stares intensify. Phone still recording every humiliating second. Frank leaned in close, his breath hot on my face. "We can, and we are. Now shut up before we make this worse." The public spectacle amplified everything, the whispers turning to murmurs, the betrayal from the staff behind the desk who glanced away instead of intervening. My mind raced with the pain of it all, years of swallowed pride flashing back, making my chest tighten with emotional trauma. I clutched my briefcase tighter, a couple more sheets nearly falling out, but I held on, determined not to let them break me completely. "At least let me pick up my things," I said, my voice rising with the building injustice. But they kept pulling, ignoring my pleas, their faces set in contempt. And just as we neared the doors, with me still struggling against their hold, a voice called out from behind the front desk, sharp and authoritative, drawing everyone's attention. That sharp voice from behind the front desk sliced through the murmurs in the lobby, and I craned my neck to see who it was, my arm still pinned by Frank and Ruiz as we stood just steps from the revolving doors. A middle-aged woman with blonde hair tied back in a severe bun marched over, her heels echoing like judgment calls on the marble floor. Her name tag glinting under the chandeliers, Ms. Elaine Carter, manager. She looked at the guards first, then at me, her eyes narrowing with instant disapproval, like she'd already decided I was the problem without hearing a word. "What's the issue here?" she asked, her tone clipped and authoritative, crossing her arms over her crisp uniform as guests continued to whisper and hold up their phones. Frank spoke up right away, his grip on my arm loosening just a bit so he could gesture. "This guy's been loitering, ma'am. No reservation. Acting suspicious." We were about to escort him out when he started resisting. Ruiz nodded vigorously, adding, "Guests have been complaining. He's been staring around like he's casing the place. Doesn't belong here." I felt a surge of frustration at their lies, the racial prejudice dripping from every word, making my skin crawl with the familiarity of it all. "Ms." Carter didn't even glance my way for confirmation. She just nodded, siding with them immediately. "I see. We have standards at the Evergreen Hotel, and suspicious individuals aren't welcome. Show me your ID right now." I still had my driver's license in my hand from earlier, clenched tight in my fist, so I held it out toward her, trying to keep my voice steady despite the anger boiling up. "Here it is, Ms. Carter. I'm Henry Johnson, and I'm not loitering. I'm a secret auditor sent by Mr. Harlan himself. That's why there's no reservation. It's meant to be under the radar." She snatched the ID from my fingers, barely looking at it before handing it back with a dismissive flick, her lips curling in contempt. This proves nothing. Anyone can carry a license. We've had too many incidents with people who don't fit in trying to pull stunts like this." The guests' whispers grew louder around us, some shaking their heads, others filming more openly, the humiliation digging deeper into me like a knife twisting slow. I'd faced this before, the quick judgments based on my black skin and casual clothes, but it never got easier. It just piled on the emotional trauma from a lifetime of being seen as less. "Check your system if you want," I said, raising my voice a little to be heard over the murmurs. "But you won't find a record because it's a secret audit. That's the whole point. No one knows until it's done. Ms." Carter laughed shortly, a sound without any humor, and waved her hand like swatting away a fly. "Secret audit? That's convenient. Sounds like an excuse from someone who's been caught. Our guests' safety comes first, and complaints about suspicious behavior like yours can't be ignored." Ruiz tightened his hold on my other arm, pulling me a step closer to the door, and I resisted just enough to stay put, my briefcase bumping against my leg. "Please, just call Mr. Harlan," I insisted, pulling out my phone with my free hand. "I have his number right here. He'll confirm everything in seconds." She stepped closer, her eyes cold and unyielding, blocking my view of the front desk where the clerk was pretending to type but really just watching. "I'm not calling anyone based on your say-so. You think you can waltz in here, looking like that, and demand special treatment? This is a luxury hotel, not a free-for-all." The injustice hit me harder then, her biased words hanging in the air, looking like that, echoing the same prejudice I'd heard all my life, from school bullies to suspicious store clerks, always assuming the worst because of my race. Guests murmured agreements now, one woman clutching her purse tighter, betrayal stinging as no one spoke up for me. "This is discrimination," I shot back, my heart pounding. "You're not even trying to verify. Give me a chance to prove it." Carter pulled her own phone from her pocket, scrolling to what looked like her contacts, her thumb hovering near the screen. "Prove it? You've had your chance. I'm calling the police to handle this eviction properly. Trespassers like you need to learn boundaries." Frank smirked at her words, his bald head shining under the lights as he leaned in. "Good call, ma'am. He's been nothing but trouble." I shook my head, the emotional trauma swelling with every second, reminding me of the times I'd swallowed my pride to keep jobs or avoid escalations. But this felt different, more public, more raw. "You can't do this without checking," I said, my voice firmer now. "It's wrong, and it'll backfire when the truth comes out." She ignored me, tapping her screen, and ordered the guards, "Hold him steady. This ends now." The lobby felt even more oppressive, phones raised higher, capturing my humiliation as if it were some viral spectacle, the sense of betrayal from the watching staff and guests making it all worse. I clutched my phone tighter, desperate to dial Mr. Harlan myself, but Ruiz batted my hand down. "No funny business," he growled. Ms. Carter lifted her phone to her ear, her expression triumphant, like she'd won already, and then her thumb pressed down on the call button. the dial tone starting faint but clear in the tense silence. The dial tone from Carter's phone buzzed softly at first, then grew louder in my ears as she held it up. Her eyes locked on me with that smug satisfaction, like she was enjoying every second of this power play. I stood there in the lobby of the Evergreen Hotel, still restrained by Frank and Ruiz near the revolving doors, my arms aching from their grips, and I felt the weight of all those staring guests pressing down on me harder than before. "This is insane," I said, my voice rising over the murmurs. "You're calling the cops without even checking my story? That's not right. Miss..." Carter ignored me, speaking into the phone instead. "Yes, police. This is the manager at the Evergreen Hotel. We have a trespasser here causing a disturbance. Black male, mid-40s, casual clothes. Send someone quick." Frank's fingers dug deeper into my shoulder then, twisting just enough to make me wince. And he leaned in close with a grin. "You heard her, buddy. Cops are on the way. Your little game's over." I tried to pull away slightly, but Ruiz yanked me back, his hold like a vice. "Stop resisting," he snapped. "You're just making it worse for yourself." The racial prejudice in their tones was blatant now. No more hiding behind protocol. It was all out in the open, fueling my emotional trauma from years of similar stops and stares. Guests were crowding closer, phones held high, recording the whole thing, and I felt the humiliation burn hotter, like I was on display in some twisted show. "Let me go," I demanded. "I haven't done anything wrong." "Miss?" Carter hung up the phone and slipped it back into her pocket, stepping even nearer with her arms crossed. "They'll be here in a few minutes. Until then, you're not going anywhere." She turned to the front desk clerk, a young woman who'd been watching silently, and barked, "Sarah, get over here and confirm those guest complaints." Sarah hurried over, clutching a notepad, her face flushed. "Yes, ma'am." 2 guests said he was paused near the lounge for a few seconds while looking around after entering, looking suspicious, like he might be up to something. I shook my head in disbelief. "Lingering? I just walked in. This is all based on assumptions because of how I look." Frank laughed outright then, a deep, mocking rumble. "Assumptions? Come on. We see it all the time. Guys like you thinking you can blend in. But you stick out. Loitering, fraud, whatever you're really here for." Ruiz joined in, his voice dripping with condescension as he tightened his grip again. "Yeah, dressed like that? No tie, no suit? You scream trouble. Probably trying to scam someone or steal identities. Auditor. My ass." Their words hit like slaps, revealing the deep-seated bias I'd suspected all along. The kind that turns a simple entrance into a criminal act just because I'm black. More staff started gathering now. A bellhop and another clerk edging closer, nodding along like this was normal. "He's right." The bellhop muttered loud enough for me to hear. "We can't have that here. Upsets the real guests." The injustice of it all surged through me, betraying any trust I had in places like this, where professionalism should rule, but prejudice wins out. I looked around at the growing crowd, people whispering things like, "What's he done?" and security's handling it, but no one stepping in to help. "You all are making a spectacle out of nothing," I said, trying to keep my cool even as anger boiled up. "Call Mr. Harlan right now, he'll sort this." "Ms." Carter waved that off with a sneer. "Mr. Harlan, please. If you were really sent by the owner, you'd have papers, a badge, something real. This secret audit nonsense is just a stall tactic." Frank pulled me a bit rougher toward the door, testing how far he could go. "Stall all you want, the cops will love hearing your story. Bet you've got a record, huh? Types like you usually do." His brazen accusation stung deep, amplifying the emotional trauma, reminding me of every time I'd been profiled, from traffic stops to job interviews where my qualifications got questioned first. The bellhop chimed in now, emboldened by the group. "Yeah, why else would he be here without checking in? Probably homeless or something. Looking for a handout." Sarah added, "And those complaints, they said he seemed dirty, out of place." I felt my face heat up with rage and shame. The public berating turning the lobby into a stage for their wickedness. Dirty? I've got a briefcase full of work. I'm cleaner than your attitudes. Ruiz shoved me lightly enough to jostle my papers again, a few more sheets fluttering but staying inside. "Watch your mouth. You're the one causing the scene." Ms. Carter nodded approvingly at them. "Keep him contained. We don't want him scaring off paying customers." The crowd swelled even more, phones flashing as they captured every humiliating moment, and I felt emotionally drained, like the fight was being sucked out of me with each insult. But their unchecked arrogance was fueling something else, a burning need for revenge that I hadn't felt this strongly before. "This isn't over," I muttered under my breath. Frank overheard and yanked harder. "Oh, it's over all right. Just wait till the badges get here. They'll drag you out proper." "Ms." Carter checked her watch, smiling faintly. "Any minute now." Then we can get back to business. I shifted my weight, trying to ease the pain in my arms, my mind racing for any way to de-escalate without giving in. Fine, I'll wait, but you're all going to regret this when the truth comes out. Ruiz rolled his eyes. Regret? We regret letting you in the door. The betrayal from the staff hit hardest, more joining the circle now. Their faces a mix of curiosity and contempt, turning this into a full-blown spectacle. My goal had shifted from explaining to just surviving this without exploding, but their escalating attacks made it clear revenge was starting to feel like the only way forward. And then Frank's grip twisted sharper, pulling me right up against the door as sirens wailed faintly in the distance. The sirens grew louder outside the Evergreen Hotel, their wail piercing the lobby like an alarm that sealed my fate, and I felt Frank's grip on my arm turn into a brutal shove as he propelled me through the revolving doors. Get him out now, before the cops deal with the mess inside, Ms. Carter ordered sharply from behind, her voice carrying that finality as Ruiz pushed my back hard, sending me stumbling out onto the cold sidewalk. I tripped over the edge of the curb, my knees hitting the pavement with a sharp crack that sent pain jolting up my legs, and my briefcase slipped from my fingers, slamming open against the concrete with papers flying everywhere, generic audit checklists, spreadsheets of numbers, work documents scattering in the wind like worthless litter across the dirty street. Guests inside pressed their faces to the glass doors, staring out at me with a mix of curiosity and disdain, some still holding up their phones to record the whole degrading scene as passersby on the sidewalk slowed down to gawk. I scrambled on my hands and knees, the rough ground scraping my palms as I desperately grabbed at the fluttering sheets, stuffing them back into the case before anyone could get a good look, my face burning with humiliation under all those eyes. Look at him down there like that, Frank called out from the doorway, his large frame blocking the entrance as he laughed. Fits right, crawling around in the gutter where he belongs. Ruiz stood beside him, arms crossed, adding with a sneer, yeah, and don't bother coming back. You're done here, pal. Banned for good. Ms. Carter stepped out just far enough to stay under the awning, her blonde hair unmoving in the breeze, and pointed a finger at me like I was some stray animal. That's right, Mr. Johnson, you're officially banned from the Evergreen Hotel premises. Any attempt to return, and we'll have you arrested on site for trespassing. Sarah, the clerk, hovered behind her with the bellhop, both watching silently but not lifting a finger to help, their betrayal hitting me like another shove as they turned away and headed back inside. The injustice of it all crashed down harder then, no one even bothering to check my story, just assuming the worst because of my skin and my clothes, turning me into this outcast on the street without a second thought. Passersby whispered among themselves now, one woman pulling her child closer as she stared, another man shaking his head and muttering, "What did he do anyway? Looks like trouble." I felt the racial prejudice in every glance. Every coded word they'd thrown at me inside now amplified out here in the open, where I was exposed and alone. My hands shook as I snapped the briefcase shut, a few stray papers still caught under my shoe, and I stood up slowly, my knees throbbing, clothes smudged with street grime that made me look even more out of place. Frank leaned out the door one last time. Better clean yourself up. Nobody wants that kind around here. Ruiz chuckled. Yeah, find somewhere else to loiter. This ain't your spot. The sirens peaked as a police car pulled up to the curb, two officers stepping out casually, one adjusting his belt while the other scanned the scene. We got a call about a trespasser, the taller one said to Miss Carter, who nodded quickly. Yes, officers, this man was causing a disturbance inside. We've handled it by escorting him out and banning him. The shorter officer looked at me. You got ID, sir? I handed over my license again, my voice steady but exhausted. I'm Henry Johnson, 42, just here for work. This is all a mistake based on nothing. He glanced at it and handed it back without much interest. No warrants, but the hotel says you're banned. Move along and stay clear of the property. No need to make this bigger. The other officer waved me off. Clear the sidewalk, folks. Show's over. They didn't dig deeper, just got back in the car and drove away, leaving me standing there as the staff retreated inside with satisfied smirks. I backed away from the hotel entrance, the weight of it all pressing on my chest like I couldn't breathe. The emotional trauma from years of this kind of treatment flooding back, being followed in stores, questioned at every turn, always having to prove I belonged somewhere. Why did I keep doing this job, traveling city to city, missing time with my family in Chicago, only to end up humiliated like this over and over? The despair settled in deep, making me question if it was worth it anymore. If the system was rigged so badly against people like me that no amount of hard work could change it. I'd earned my degree, built my career through sheer grit, but moments like this stripped it all away, leaving me isolated on this busy street. feeling like I'd hit the absolute bottom with no way up. But as I stood there, catching my breath, a quiet resolve started to form inside me. A small spark that said I couldn't let them win this easily. I wasn't broken yet, and somehow I'd find a way to turn this around. I walked a few more blocks away from the Evergreen Hotel, my legs heavy and my mind spinning from the whole ordeal, until I found a quiet bench in a small park across the street from a coffee shop. The sun was dipping low, casting long shadows on the pavement, and I sat there staring at my scuffed briefcase. The weight of what just happened pressing down on me like a ton of bricks. I'd always prided myself on staying calm, on handling the subtle digs and outright biases with professionalism. But this time it felt different, deeper, more personal. Like they'd stripped away not just my dignity but my purpose. As I caught my breath, wiping the dirt from my pants, I heard laughter drifting from the hotel direction. Probably Frank and Ruiz cracking jokes about the troublemaker they'd tossed out. It stung, imagining them high-fiving inside Miss Carter patting them on the back for a job well done. My phone buzzed in my pocket then, pulling me out of the fog. And I pulled it out to see a text from my wife back in Chicago. "How's the audit going? Miss you." And I stared at the screen, the simple message hitting hard amid the chaos, reminding me of why I pushed through this job, the steady paycheck, the stability for our family, even if it meant enduring crap like today. "Not great," I texted back quickly. "Rough day, but I'll handle it." Setting the phone down, I leaned back on the bench, the emotional trauma bubbling up again. Flashes of past incidents mixing with this one, the time a client questioned my math because it didn't look right, or the airport pat-downs that always seemed to last longer for me. Enough was enough. I couldn't keep swallowing this poison, letting people like them walk all over me without consequence. A jogger passed by, glancing at my disheveled state but not stopping, and it fueled the fire starting to build inside. No more weakness, no more turning the other cheek. I had to strike back, show them they couldn't get away with treating anyone like that, especially not someone with the truth on his side. I picked up my phone again, scrolling through my contacts until I landed on Mr. Harlan's number, my finger hovering over the call button. This was my way to turn the tide, direct access to the owner, someone who'd trusted me enough to hire me personally. But I paused, thinking it through. Calling him now, hot and angry, might come off wrong. Better to gather my thoughts, make it professional. But yeah, this was the leverage I needed. Meanwhile, back at the hotel, I imagine them laughing, thinking they're right. Their triumph grated on me even from afar, believing they'd won, that I was just another nobody they'd brushed off. It made my blood boil, the way they patted themselves on the back for outright discrimination. Acting like heroes in their little kingdom, I stood up from the bench, pacing a bit to shake off the stiffness in my knees, and decided right then I was done being the victim. Time to counterattack, use what I knew to expose them. My role as auditor gave me insight into the hotel's operations, things like security protocols, guest complaints logs that could back up my side. I ducked into the coffee shop across the street, ordering a black coffee to steady my nerves, and sat at a corner table where I could see the hotel entrance in the distance. As I sipped, watching guests come and go, a plan started forming in my head, simple but effective. I'd contact Mr. Harlan, lay out the facts without emotion, and let him know how his staff had botched things. But first, I'd need to document everything. My notes, the timeline, maybe even reach out to any witnesses from the lobby. The frustration built as I imagined their smug faces crumbling when the owner got involved. Outside, a delivery truck pulled up to the hotel, and I saw Frank step out to sign for it, chatting with the driver like nothing had happened. "Busy day?" the driver might ask. Frank would shrug. "Nah, just dealt with some trash earlier, all good now." It was infuriating, their overconfidence, thinking they were untouchable. Ruiz appeared next, helping unload boxes, and they shared a laugh, probably at my expense. "Remember that guy's face when we tossed him?" Ruiz would say. "Priceless." Frank would reply, "Yeah, and the manager nailed it with the ban. She's the best. Ms. Carter might even poke her head out. Everything under control out here?" They'd nod. "Yes, ma'am. No issues." Sitting there, coffee cooling in my hand, I felt the shift inside me, no longer just surviving, but ready to fight back. Their arrogance was their weakness. They had no idea who they were dealing with. I pulled out a notepad from my briefcase, jotting down key details, times, names, what was said. This was the start, the awakening I needed after hitting that low. As the sky darkened, I watched them lock up for the evening shift change, still basking in their victory. It created this knot of frustration in my gut, knowing they slept easy while I plotted. But that was fine. It only made me more determined. The phone rang once, twice, and then Mr. Harlan's voice came through, steady and businesslike. with a hint of surprise, like he wasn't expecting a call this late. "Henry, is that you? What's going on with the Evergreen audit? I figured you'd be knee-deep in the books. Bye now." As I paced the park path under the fading light, my voice low but urgent as I explained everything from the start, the guards stopping me right away, the rough grab in front of everyone, Miss Carter siding with them without a glance at my side. They dragged me out, Mr. Harlan scattered my papers on the street and banned me, all because I didn't look the part. It's straight-up discrimination, and now I can't even get back in to do the job you hired me for. He went quiet for a second, and I heard him tapping on his keyboard in the background. "That's ridiculous, Henry. I chose you for this because you're the best at spotting issues quietly. No fanfare, just results. If my staff pulled that, it's a huge problem. Walk me through it again." Details. I repeated the key parts, mentioning Frank's bald head in aggressive tone, Ruiz yanking my arm, Miss Carter threatening the cops and calling me suspicious. They ignored my ID, didn't check anything, just assumed based on my race and casual clothes. The guests filmed it, but no one helped. Mr. Harlan muttered something under his breath, then said, "All right, this needs fixing. What can I do to get you back on track?" I stopped pacing and leaned against a tree, the park lights flickering on as dusk settled in. "I need evidence to prove what happened, sir. Start with the lobby security footage. It'll show the whole thing from my entrance to the eviction." He agreed without hesitation. "Good call. I'll have IT pull the clips right now and email them to you securely. No traces in the system logs. Give me 20 minutes. They're on call for audits like this." I thanked him, feeling the first real shift as he took my side so quickly. "And if there's any internal data on guest complaints or staff emails, that could show if this is a pattern." Mr. Harlan paused, then said, "I'll authorize access to the archive through your auditor login. Check for anything under Carter's name, but download local only. Don't forward or print yet. Stay off their radar." We hung up, and I sat back on the bench, watching the time tick by over the next half hour. My knees still aching, but my mind sharpening with purpose. My phone dinged with an email from Mr. Harlan. "Footage attached. Archive login attached. Let me know what you find. Zotin and na recycle sign. Hemas." I opened the videos first, playing them on mute at first to avoid drawing attention in the park. There I was, walking in calmly with my briefcase, Frank blocking my path immediately, his large frame looming as he barked orders. Ruiz grabbed my arm next, the camera catching every twist and pull while guests whispered and pulled out phones. Ms. Carter strode in, glancing at my ID for a split second before waving it off, her lips moving in what I knew were those biased words about standards and suspicious behavior. I downloaded the files to my device, saving them in an encrypted folder. Solid proof that shifted things from just my story to visual fact. By the time the park was fully dark, about an hour after the call, I logged into the staff email archive using the credentials Mr. Harlan sent, my fingers careful on the screen as I searched for terms like suspicious guests and complaints. The system was slow, but results popped up. A thread from Ms. Carter to the team dated a few weeks back. Team reminder to flag non-guest behavior early. Maintain brand standards by addressing profile mismatches promptly. We've had unverified individuals lingering. Report to security for quick resolution. Frank had replied, "On it, ma'am. Handled a similar case last month, no issues." Another email from her to upper management mentioned skipping diversity training due to operational priorities, with a note about repeated flags on certain demographics. And this was the accidental discovery I'd hoped for. A clear pattern of bias hidden in corporate speak, not just my incident, but a systemic thing. I took screenshots, saving them locally without leaving any download traces. The balance tilting more as I realized this could take down their whole operation. I wasn't done yet. I needed outside corroboration to make it airtight. I texted my old colleague Mike, who'd done audits with me before and knew the drill. "Mike, quick favor, got profiled and ejected from Evergreen today during a job. Looking for witness videos from the lobby. Check social media?" He responded after a 10-minute wait. "Sorry to hear, man. Give me a bit. Searching now." Over the next half hour, as I sipped water from a nearby fountain to stay alert, Mike texted back, "Found one, a guest posted about it, calling it unfair. Reach out?" I messaged her directly, "Hi, I was the man in the hotel incident you posted about. Would you share your video or a statement? It could help set things right." She replied after a short delay, maybe 15 minutes. "That was wrong what they did. Ignoring you like that. Here's the clip I filmed. Shows the manager dismissing everything. Use it if it helps." The video downloaded, a shaky phone angle from the crowd showing Ms. Carter scoffing at my explanations, Frank's smirk as they pulled me, and even Sarah at the desk looking away instead of intervening. With this witness piece added to the footage and emails, the scales had fully shifted. I had leverage now, all gathered in the shadows without a whisper to the antagonists. They were probably inside the hotel still, oblivious, wrapping up their shifts like nothing happened. I stood up, slipping my phone away, ready to plan the first real move against them. The power finally in my hands. With the evidence locked away on my phone, the lobby footage showing every grab and shove, those biased emails laying out their pattern of discrimination, and the witness video capturing Ms. Carter's cold dismissal, I felt the power starting to flow back into my hands. Like I was no longer just the guy they'd thrown out, but someone who could make them pay. I walked back toward the hotel, but kept my distance, finding a spot across the street in a shadowed doorway where I could watch the entrance without being seen, my heart steady now with that quiet determination I'd built up. Mr. Harlan had given me the green light to proceed carefully, so I decided this was the moment for my first real strike, reporting the incident internally without tipping them off. Using a colleague to help keep it under wraps, I pulled out my phone again and texted Mike, my colleague who'd already helped with the social media search. Mike got the footage and emails. Need you to file an initial anonymous report to the owner's HR line. Use the discrimination protocol we know from past audits. Attach the basics but hold the full details for now. He replied quickly, his message popping up. On it, Henry. I'll make it look like a guest complaint to start. Reference the video without linking it yet. Should hit their system in 10 minutes. I nodded to myself, picturing how this would land like a subtle bomb in their inbox, prompting an internal review without them knowing it came from me. Over the next half hour, as the streetlights buzzed on and cars passed by, I watched the hotel entrance, seeing Ruiz step out for a smoke break, leaning against the wall with that smug look like the day had been a win. Frank joined him shortly after, his large bald head catching the light as he clapped Ruiz on the shoulder. Good shift today, man, I imagined Frank saying, though I couldn't hear from this far. That guy we tossed? Total joke claiming he's an auditor. Miss Carter shut him down quick. Ruiz would laugh, flicking his cigarette. Yeah, she was on fire. Bet he's home crying now. No way he comes back after that ban. Their relaxed postures grated on me, still celebrating while I plotted in the shadows. Mike texted back then, report filed. HR acknowledged receipt, said they'll review security logs tomorrow. No names mentioned yet, but it'll rattle them. I'm for trapeze and some back. I felt a surge of satisfaction, the first counterblow landing without them even feeling it yet, creating that undercurrent of unease in their perfect little world. But I wanted to push a bit more, so I called Mr. Harlan quietly, keeping my voice low. Sir, initial report's in through a third party. It'll trigger a quiet audit review without alerting the staff. Mr. Harlan's tone was approving. Smart move, Henry. I'll monitor from my end, make sure it escalates internally. Keep gathering if you find more, but stay safe. I hung up and slipped deeper into the shadows, watching as Ms. Carter appeared at the door, checking something on her tablet before heading back inside. She looked composed, probably thinking the day ended on a high note, unaware that HR was already poking around because of my push. Inside, I could picture her in her office, wrapping up emails. Sarah, any loose ends from today? She'd ask over the intercom. Sarah would respond promptly. No, ma'am, the ban's logged and the lobby's clear. Guests seemed fine after. Ms. Carter might smile to herself. Excellent. We handled that trespasser perfectly. Keeps our standards up. The bellhop could pop in then. Need anything else, boss? She'd wave him off. No, we're good. Tomorrow's another day. Their overconfidence built the suspense in my mind, knowing my secret move was already in motion. Like a crack forming in their foundation they couldn't see yet. I decided to add one more layer, texting the witness to confirm her statement. Thanks for the video. Would you mind a quick written note on what you saw? It'll help with the report. She replied after a few minutes. Sure, here. I was in the lobby and saw security grab a black man who said he was there for work. They ignored his ID and dragged him out roughly while the manager threatened police. It looked like racial profiling to me, no fair check at all. I saved that too, attaching it mentally to the growing file, feeling the tension rise as this first blow set the stage for more. Back across the street, Frank and Ruiz finished their break, heading inside with nods to each other. Probably planning a beer after work. I think that guy's gonna sue or something? Ruiz might ask casually. Frank would shrug. Nah, types like him talk big but do nothing. We're covered. Cameras show he resisted. If only they knew those same cameras were now my weapon, downloaded and ready. Ms. Carter emerged again briefly, locking eyes with a passing guest and smiling professionally, her blonde hair neat as ever. Have a great evening, she'd say, all charm on the surface while the report simmered in HR's queue. I stepped back further, my phone vibrating with an update from Mike. HR's flagged it for review, mentioned pulling footage in the morning. They're sensing something off, but no panic yet. The suspense built inside me. Emotions shifting from the earlier humiliation to a controlled anticipation. Knowing this counterattack was just the start. With support from Mike and Mr. Harlan, I was no longer alone, operating secretly to build toward their downfall. The racial prejudice they'd shown, the injustice of the ban, all of it fueled my next steps. But for now, this first blow was enough to keep me going. As the night deepened, I watched them one last time as Carter heading to her car, Frank and Ruiz clocking out, still unaware of the storm brewing. It created this perfect tension, their calm against my hidden advance, making me eager for what came next. I woke up early the next morning in my rental apartment, the bruises on my arms from Frank and Ruiz's grips still throbbing as a reminder of the humiliation they'd put me through, but I shook it off and grabbed my phone to check for updates. The racial prejudice that fueled their quick assumptions about me not belonging there lingered in my mind, making me more determined to expose even a piece of the truth today. I texted Mike quickly to see if HR had moved on the anonymous report. "Any buzz, Wissing?" I asked. He replied right away, "Yeah, they're reviewing logs this morning, Ms. Carter's been notified. Stay tuned." I nodded to myself and headed out. Driving to the coffee shop a few blocks from the Evergreen Hotel, where Mr. Harlan had arranged the meeting with Mia from corporate HR. The place was quiet when I arrived, just a few early customers sipping their drinks, and I spotted Mia at a back table with her laptop open and a cup of black coffee in front of her. She was in her 40s, with dark hair tied back and a professional blouse, her expression all business as she stood to shake my hand. "Mr. Johnson, Mia from corporate HR, Mr. Harlan briefed me. You're the auditor, and this incident sounds serious." I sat down across from her and said, "It is." They profiled me the moment I walked in, grabbed me without checking anything, and dragged me out like I was trash. "It's discrimination, and I've got some proof to show you." And she leaned forward and replied, "The anonymous report we got last night mentioned a lobby eviction with bias concerns. Walk me through what happened, and let's see what you've got." I started with the basics, describing how I entered the lobby casually to blend in for the audit, only for Frank to block me right away with that skeptical glare. He said I didn't look like I belonged, and Ruiz grabbed my arm hard before I could explain. Ms. Viz, Carter, the manager, showed up and dismissed my ID without a real look, threatening the police to get me out fast. Mia jotted notes on her pad and asked, "What made you think it was prejudice?" I met her eyes and said, "The words they used, suspicious, it doesn't fit. It felt targeted at my race and appearance. I faced this injustice before, but this was public, with guests staring and no one helping. The betrayal from staff who should have verified my role hit hard, stirring up old emotional trauma from similar stops in my life." She nodded thoughtfully and said, "That's troubling. If you have evidence, now's the time." I pulled out my phone and opened the short security clip, making sure to explain its origin up front. This footage was exported legally by Mr. Harlan's IT under my auditor authorization. They sent it directly to me to preserve the record without any system flags. I played the segment showing Ms. Carter waving off my explanations while Frank held my arm, her lips moving in that condescending way. "See how she ignores me completely? That's the manager escalating without facts." Mia watched it twice, her brow furrowing deeper each time, and then said, "This doesn't align with our policies. It's clear overreach. Anything else?" I showed her screenshots of 1 or 2 emails from the archive, clarifying again. These were authorized by corporate through my login. I only took local copies to avoid any tracking. Look at this one from Ms. Carter about flagging profile mismatches for quick removal. It's coded language, but it points to a bias in how they handle people who look like me. She scrolled through the screenshots slowly and set her phone down with a sigh. "This suggests a pattern we need to investigate. And you mentioned a witness?" I kept it simple and replied, "Yes. A guest in the lobby filmed it and gave me a statement. Her video corroborates the dismissal and rough handling, showing the same ignore and escalate." Mia rubbed her temple and said, "All right, Mr. Johnson, this is enough to launch a confidential review. I'll contact Miss P. Carter, Frank, and Ruiz directly for statements, no wider staff involvement yet to keep it discreet. We'll pull the full footage and emails officially and compare." I felt a rush of satisfaction then, the control starting to shift back to me after all their betrayal, and I said, "That's what I need. Quiet but thorough. This exposure is the first step to making them accountable for the injustice." She assured me, "We will. Corporate doesn't tolerate this, and Mr. Harlan wants it handled right. I'll update you on progress." I left the coffee shop with my head clearer, the lingering emotional trauma from their public shaming easing a bit as I drove back near the hotel and parked across the street, hidden behind some parked cars to observe without being spotted. From there, I watched Carter pull up in her car, her steps hurried and her face tense as she checked her phone repeatedly before heading inside. Not her usual composed stride. A little later, Frank arrived. His large bald head bowed slightly as he talked briefly to Ruiz at the entrance, both of them glancing around with furrowed brows instead of their typical easy banter. Ruiz gestured toward the lobby doors, and they went in quickly, their postures stiff like something was weighing on them. The atmosphere around the hotel seemed off even from a distance. The front desk visible through the glass looked busier than usual, with Sarah handling guests but stealing glances toward Ms. Carter's office door, which stayed closed longer than normal. I saw Frank get summoned inside after a bit, walking down the hall with hurried steps and coming out 10 minutes later looking frustrated, rubbing his neck as he muttered something to Ruiz, who nodded tensely. Ms. Carter stepped out briefly for air, pacing the sidewalk with her arms crossed and phone to her ear, her blonde hair catching the wind as she spoke urgently, her free hand gesturing sharply like she was arguing her side. Whatever she heard must have rattled her because she hung up and went back in with a tight jaw, the cracks in their confident facade starting to show through these small signs of worry. Ruiz paced near the doors after that, checking his watch and looking over his shoulder toward the office, while Frank stood nearby with crossed arms, their usual smugness replaced by defensive huddles. The injustice they'd thrown at me was biting back now, forcing them into this weak posture of denial without them even knowing the full storm yet. I felt my confidence swell, clashing with the betrayal I'd endured. But this partial exposure brought real satisfaction, seeing them start to tremble under the weight of their own actions. Mia texted me then, confirming the next move. Confidential review underway, statements from Carter, Frank, and Ruiz set for tomorrow. I got Mia's text about the statements being scheduled, and it lit a fire under me to push things further, knowing I had the full evidence ready. The complete security footage from multiple angles, those damning email chains showing the pattern of bias, and the witness video with her signed statement calling it straight-up profiling. The next day, I headed to the corporate office building downtown, a sleek glass tower where Mr. Harlan had his main setup, my suit pressed and my briefcase holding printouts of everything just in case the digital versions weren't enough. My heart pounded as I rode the elevator up to the boardroom floor, the emotional trauma from that lobby humiliation still fresh, but now it fueled me, turning into this sharp confidence that I was about to lay it all out and watch them squirm. Mia met me in the lobby area and led me down a hallway to the boardroom, a big room with a long oak table, chairs all around, and a screen at one end for presentations. Mr. Harlan will join remotely, she said as we walked in. We've got Miss Carter, Frank, and Ruiz coming in for what they think is just a routine follow-up on the complaint. Keep it professional, we'll reveal step by step. I nodded and took a seat at one end of the table, setting up my laptop while Mia arranged some folders. I'm ready, I told her. This is comprehensive, they won't be able to deny it. She gave me a reassuring look and replied, good, let's get the truth out there. Miss Carter arrived first, her heels clicking on the floor as she entered with that forced professional smile. But I could see the tension in her eyes, like she knew something was off. Mia, what's this about? She asked, sitting down across from me without even glancing my way at first. When she did, her face tightened. You? The trespasser from the other day, what are you doing here? Mia held up a hand and said, Ms. Carter, this is Mr. Johnson, the auditor Mr. Harlan hired. We're here to discuss the incident. Ms. Carter crossed her arms and shot back. Auditor, we handled a loiterer properly. No need for this. I stayed calm and replied, handled? You profiled me and dragged me out without checking anything. But let's get to the facts. Frank and Ruiz came in next, Frank's large frame filling the doorway as he lumbered to a seat, Ruiz following with a nervous glance around the room. Boss, what's going on? Frank asked Miss Carter, his bald head shining under the lights. She leaned over and whispered something to them, probably trying to align their stories. But Mia cleared her throat. Everyone's here, Mr. Harlan's on the line. The screen flickered on, and Mr. Harlan appeared, his face stern in the video feed. Let's start. Mr. Johnson, present your side. I stood up and connected my laptop to the screen, starting with the full security footage. This is what happened, exported legally by your IT under my authorization. Watch how Frank stops me immediately. Ruiz grabs me, and Miss Carter dismisses my ID without a look. The room went quiet as the video played, showing every rough pull and ignored protest. Guests staring in the background. Carter shifted in her seat and said, he was suspicious, no reservation, casual clothes. We followed protocol. Frank nodded and added, yeah, he resisted. We had to act. I paused the video and replied, resisted? I was explaining who I was. And here's more. Emails from your archive authorized by corporate. This one from you, Ms. Carter, about flagging profile mismatches and quick evictions. It's a pattern of bias. Like I put the screenshots up on the screen, the words clear for everyone to see. Ruiz leaned forward and muttered, "That's just standard procedure, not targeted." Ms. Carter jumped in, her voice rising, "This is taken out of context. We maintain standards for all guests, no discrimination here." Mr. Harlan spoke up from the screen then, his tone sharp. "Context? It looks like prejudice to me. Mr. Johnson, anything else?" I nodded and played the witness video, the shaky phone footage showing Mrs. Sis, Carter's scoff and Frank's smirk up close. This guest saw it all and stated it was profiling, ignored my role as auditor. Based on how I looked, Frank slammed his hand on the table lightly and said, "That's one person's view, we had complaints." Ruiz added, "Yeah, he didn't belong. Casual attire screamed trouble. Miss." Carter tried to discredit me, pointing a finger. "He's twisting this. We banned him for good reason. No proof he's really the auditor." I shot back, "No proof, Mr. Harlan hired me personally. Call him if you want." Mr. Harlan intervened again, his voice booming through the speakers. "I did hire him, and this evidence is overwhelming. Your resistance isn't helping. Looks like you're covering up bias." Ms. Carter's face paled and she stammered, "Sir, it's not like that. We were protecting the hotel." Frank crossed his arms and grumbled, "We've done this before, no issues then." I felt the tables turning fully, the truth hitting them hard despite their attempts to flip it back. Done this before? That's the pattern in those emails, targeting people who don't fit. Ruiz tried one last push. He's exaggerating, the video doesn't show everything. But Mia shook her head and said, "It shows enough. This sets up a full review." The conflict peaked in that room, my growing confidence clashing against their denial. The air thick with tension as Mr. Harlan wrapped up. "We'll decide next steps based on this." "Mr. Johnson, solid work." Ms. Carter glared at me, her voice low. "This isn't over. You'll regret dragging us through this." I met her eyes and replied, "Regret? After what you did to me, the truth's out now." Frank muttered under his breath, "We were just doing our jobs." But their resistance was crumbling, the evidence too strong, leading straight to whatever judgment came next. The boardroom felt electric after I laid out all the evidence, with Ms. Carter, Frank, and Ruiz sitting there trying to deny everything. But their words rang hollow against the videos and emails staring back at them from the screen. Mr. Harlan's face on the video feed hardened as he listened to their weak excuses, and he finally cut in with a firm voice that silenced the room. "Enough, I've seen and heard plenty. This isn't just a mistake. It's a clear case of discrimination, and it stops now." Ms. Carter leaned forward, her face flushed, and said, "Sir, we were just protecting the hotel. Guests complained about suspicious behavior, and he didn't have a reservation." Frank nodded quickly and added, "Yeah, we followed the rules. No way this was bias." Ruiz chimed in. He resisted, made it worse himself. But Mr. Harlan shook his head and replied, "The footage shows otherwise. You ignored his ID, grabbed him without cause, and those emails prove a pattern." "Mia, what's the recommendation?" Mia flipped through her notes and looked up at everyone. "Based on the evidence, we recommend immediate termination for Ms. Carter, Frank, and Ruiz for violating company policy on discrimination and misconduct. We'll also refer this to legal for potential civil claims." Ms. Carter's eyes widened and she stood up halfway, her chair scraping the floor. "Termination? That's unfair. I've run that hotel perfectly for years." I looked at her steadily and said, "Perfectly. You banned me without checking. Humiliated me in front of everyone because I didn't fit your idea of who belongs there." Frank crossed his arms and muttered, "This is bullshit. We were doing our jobs, keeping out trouble." Ruiz added, "Yeah, and now you're twisting it into something it's not." Mr. Harlan's voice boomed again. "Your jobs don't include profiling. You're fired, effective immediately. Clear out your things today." Ms. Carter sat back down hard, her hands shaking as she grabbed her phone like she could call someone to fix this. But Mia held up a hand. "Security will escort you out of the building after this meeting, and we'll be notifying authorities about the assault during the eviction could lead to charges." Frank's face turned red and he pointed at me. "Assault? He was trespassing. We had rights." I shook my head and replied, "Trespassing? I was there on your boss's orders. You assumed because I'm black and dressed casual, and now it's costing you." Ruiz slumped in his seat and said, "This can't be happening. We didn't mean it like that." But Mr. Harlan cut them off. "Intent doesn't matter when actions hurt people and break laws." Mia handled the paperwork. I watched as the reality hit them, as Carter's professional mask cracking into something desperate, her voice pleading now, "Mr. Harlan, please reconsider." I've got a family, bills to pay. It was a one-time thing. Frank nodded and said, yeah, give us a warning or something. We'll take training. Ruiz added, I need this job. Don't do this over one guy. Mr. Harlan leaned closer to the camera and replied, one guy? This evidence shows it's not isolated. You've damaged the hotel's reputation and hurt an innocent man. No second chances. Mia stood up and motioned to the door where 2 security guards waited outside. Time to go. Your access is revoked, and we'll mail your final checks. Ms. Carter gathered her things slowly, shooting me a glare. You think you've won? People like you always play the victim card. I met her eyes and said, victim? I earned my place. You're the one who judged without facts. Justice isn't a card. It's what you deserve. Frank stood up roughly, his chair tipping back, and muttered under his breath as he headed out. This is rigged, bet he faked that footage. Ruiz followed, looking defeated, and said to Frank, what do we do now? Job market's tough. And Boskin Sainlind. Ebuwa. The guards escorted them down the hall, their voices fading as the door closed behind them. Mr. Harlan turned back to the screen and looked at me directly. Henry, I'm sorry this happened under my roof. You've got my full support. The audit role is affirmed and will compensate you for the ordeal, including any lost time and emotional distress. I felt a weight lift off my chest then. The satisfaction of seeing them punished, mixing with relief that it was over. Thank you, sir. That means a lot. But make it public, so others know this won't be tolerated. He nodded and replied, agreed. We'll issue a statement apologizing and outlining new training to prevent this. Your report will help fix the whole chain. Mia packed up her laptop and shook my hand. You've done a good thing here, Mr. Johnson. This could change how we operate. I smiled for the first time in days and said, I hope so. No one should go through that just for doing their job. Mr. Harlan signed off with a final word. Stay in touch, Henry. Your work's valuable. Let's get that audit back on track. I left the boardroom feeling healed. The professional life I'd built no longer tainted by their bias, knowing I'd turned their injustice into a win not just for me but for anyone else facing the same crap. Driving away, I called my wife back in Chicago. Honey, it's done. They're fired and we're getting compensated. She laughed through happy tears and said, I'm so proud of you. Come home soon. I hung up and breathed easy, justice finally prevailing like it should. As I pulled onto the highway, I glanced back at the city skyline, ready for whatever came next. My dignity restored and the bad guys getting exactly what they deserved. Now, let me ask you honestly, if you were threatened, slandered, or forced to accept money to lie, would you have the courage to say no? Tell me about a time in your life when you were forced to remain silent to avoid trouble. If this story reminds you that your voice also has value, please like to support those who dare to speak up. Share so that one more person doesn't have to bow their head and subscribe because this world needs more people like. On screen right now, you'll see 2 new stories I think you'll really enjoy. There are many more waiting for you on the channel, so don't forget to subscribe and hit the bell so you never miss one. See you in the next story. Until then, take care of yourself and the people you love. With all my love and respect.